there are two types of requirement of logistics park. So we got to understand that there is certain logistics park which is meant for home consumption, which are going to help fulfillment of demand within the country. The second multimodal logistics park need international connectivity. So if we are talking about, being an international hub, then we need to have multimodal part like China has done along, the coastline, and where it's like we spoke about, port development infrastructure, which is then connected to the hinterland, because the raw material and the manufacturing is happening in the hinterland, right? And then that cargo has to come to the ports and exit from here.
I think in the best interest of time, we can begin. As our members keep joining in, we'll start the conversations. So thank you very much for taking the time out today and joining in, and welcome to the Blue Circle. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone, our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience that they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience for joining us. We've received close to 150 registrations, most of whom are senior leaders and CXOs. Many of them are our members and repeat visitors to our webinars, which is very encouraging and motivates us to provide high levels of dialogue through the online channels as well. And for those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem which is curated for business leaders across 6 sectors, which are logistics, real estate, energy, e-mobility, healthcare, and aerospace and defense. We also present socioeconomic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series in our digital publication. And in addition to this, then you'll be happy to know that we very recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app, which is curated for leaders, somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with like-minded leaders, house high quality curated content, and provide access to business opportunities across our core sectors. So those leaders who are interested, please do join us. I will share the link to the app in the chat section, and we'll be sending out invitations to our new guests post our webinars as well, along with your respective invitation codes. And today, as part of our Make in India series, we're privileged to have big minds and leading thinkers of the industry to join in for our logistic community's discussion. The topic for this session is how improving logistics infrastructure will catalyze Make in India. In the best interest of time, I will just briefly mention the names and designations of our panelists. We have with us Mr. Jagannarayan, Padmanabhan, Director and Practice Leader, Transport and Logistics, CRISIL Infrastructure Advisory, Mr. Manu Bhalla, Director and Global Head, Contract Logistics and Supply Chain, Freight Systems, Mr. Vineet Vaibhav, Chief Development Officer, Welspun 1 Logistics Parks, Mr. Vinod Mathur, Senior Strategic Service Director, Yonder, India, and the Chair and Moderator for this session is Mr. Neeraj Bansal, COO, India Global, National Leader, Supply Chain Realignment, KPMG. Thank you very much, sir. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to have you. And I now request Mr. Bansal to please chair and moderate this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Siddharth. And good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be with you today. And a very warm welcome to all of you from my side as well. And welcome my panelists for this session, Manu, Vinod, Vineet, Jagan. It's a fantastic to have you here with us. And thank you so much for joining us today. For the session today, we will start with an opening presentation to quickly set the context. We'll share some broad developments and stats for the sector, and then we will work on getting insights from our panelists and on the 3-4 themes around it. So national logistics policy, standardization theme that has been driven at the current time in the sector, some of the things on the hard infrastructure, automation, innovation, something which is really spoken about and something which the sector has adopted also wholeheartedly, and also in terms of some of the asks from the government as well. During the session, we'll also cover questions from the audience. Hence, would request all the audience member to keep posting them in the Q&A section, the functionality which is there as part of the Zoom. So we will pick it up and try and answer the maximum amount of questions as we kind of go through the session as well. So with this, let's begin with a short presentation. Siddharth, if I may request you to share the presentation. Yeah, so maybe we can put it on a full screen mode. Yeah, so essentially, as you all know also, and can see from the slide, India has achieved a position of strength in some of the select sectors. So pharma, mobiles, organic chemicals, and here we see that we continue to increase our production and exports also in these areas. The Indian pharma sector today is supplying over 60% of the global demand for various vaccines, and almost 40% of the generic demand, which is in US, and 25% of all medicines in UK. We are the second largest mobile manufacturing company across the world, since 2017. Mobile manufacturing capacity, if you see, essentially has doubled, from 2014 to 2019. Almost more than 200 mobile manufacturing units have been set up in the country. While these are very strong and positive developments, but if you see the our export share, so that's kind of remained while we've grown as well, but it has not grown significantly. And some of the countries, and we'll discuss slightly more in the detail as well later in terms of like how Vietnam, Thailand, those countries are kind of really increased their manufacturing contribution from exports point of view there. And also like Bangladesh, from a, let's say, Apple perspective, has really increased its market share also there. So while we have achieved some good progress in some of the sectors, but there is still a long way to cover for us there. And overall, also, if you see on the bottom right, there's a graph on the manufacturing sector share, that you will see has kind of remained range bound, for the past 20 years. So, our low productivity, availability of cheaper import substitutes have kind of been affecting that growth in the manufacturing sector there. And also, there is a strong reliance that we have for some of the key items on imports there. In the slide also, if you see on the top and the right, so we are importing 85% of the wireless telecom equipment, 80% of solar modules, and 100% of our semiconductor requirements is what we currently dependent on. These are some which are changing as we kind of go through with some of the government intentions that have happened around it. And when we compare this, with some of the other rapidly developing economies, so like in Thailand, it's like 25% of their entire GDP is kind of coming through manufacturing side of it there in 2019, and Malaysia, again 21% comes through the manufacturing sector. Indonesia, again, an economy which is quite smaller than we are, has 20% of its GDP coming out of the manufacturing sector. So they've all been able to, these are all economies which are rapidly developing, and they've been able to increase their, share of manufacturing to above 20% by certain specific efforts that they have taken on that there. If you move to the next slide, Siddharth, please. So in the line of the government thinking, that we have to increase the manufacturing shares contribution to GDP from 17% or to 25%, in the next 5-year period there, which is where government has launched a major initiative, which is being spoken a lot today in terms of the production linked incentives part of it. As it's kind of been spoken a lot, so we'll not go into details over there, but just in overall context for us, it's kind of good to recap that it is a targeted scheme incentivizing global and Indian companies as well to increase manufacturing capacity in India for chosen sectors. In that, currently we're looking at about 9 sectors, there, but this is certainly potential for expansion to the other sectors as well. These are what the government refers to at times also as champion sectors, where there is a growth required and the government is putting certain amount of effort over there. The overall outlay is almost $27 billion, for this, and the government expects that, by these measures, almost $500 billion will get added to the manufacturing sector, with this scheme that the government is running with. And this is not the only scheme that the government's come up with. Also, though, as we are aware, there are many other measures that the government has taken, to improve the FDI, improve the business climate as well. So on ease of doing business, from 144, we're down to 63 right now in the last 7 years, but point of view there. So there is a lot more flexibility, a lot more changes happened on that area. And then in terms of the, some of the aspects around taxation as well, while there is a simplification that has happened on some of the tax areas, or in terms of introduction of a large change in terms of GST, which had a very significant impact on the logistics sector as well. The government has also changed the corporate tax rate, so and made India one of the most favorable or most competitive, from a tax rate perspective, at a, like for new companies, it is right now at 15%, if they're going to manufacturing there, which is really the lowest amongst all emerging economies there. So with this, we would also see that the point that I was trying to make earlier, that with $300 odd billion, the global exports, has been basically hovering around 1.5%, 1.5% of the, let's say, the global trade, since 2010, and one of the key elements which is affecting it is the cost, which is the competitiveness of India's goods, and one of the areas which again impacts that cost competitiveness is the freight distribution time, as well as the cost that we have over there. So with this, we'll move to some of the key aspects on the logistics sector, and we'll deep focus on that there. These are some of the, I would say, important and relevant statistics, and I'll let you just absorb a few of these for a few seconds. So as you would have noted that manufacturing related commodities are accounting for almost 40%, of the goods which are handled by the logistics industry, which is given in the center of the slide. Logistics sector is estimated to grow at a CAGR of 10.5% during the period, like from now till 2025. And this is being fueled by the changing customer preferences, which has also been affected, or let's say positively affected, by the proliferation of, you can call it, clearly from e-commerce point of view. Digitization is a very large theme that is running right now, which is helping to make the logistics sector and the participants, efficient, agile, and also their decisions getting more insight and data driven on that. And also all of that change would also help us to minimize the disruptions which are getting caused by the COVID-19 pandemic there in that. But everything comes with its own package. So while there are some positive side of it, there is also some challenges that we have, and which is where certain improvement needs to happen as well there. Siddharth, if you can move to the next slide, please. So as you can see that, there are certain challenges that the country or the logistics sector in the country is facing. Are key, if I talk about 2-3 of them, so then our logistics costs continue to be at 13 to 14% of the GDP, which is certainly very higher compared to the global average of 8%. Also, this is creating currently a competitiveness gap of almost 180 to 190 billion dollars. And as we kind of move forward on it, if this continues to be like that, then this gap would go up to like a $500 billion or $500 billion by 2030 there. And some of it is also getting driven entirely by the model mix that we have today, which is kind of skewed very heavily towards road transport, and resulting in higher turnaround time, carbon emission, which is one of the areas which is getting debated or spoken a lot as well in the logistics sector, with the carbon emissions aspect of it there, and also noise pollution and the accidents part of it there. And if you look at it, what I said, we have the skew over the road transport. So 71% of the freight distribution is happening through the road transport, while the overall, you say that the railway continues to be dominant in other countries, but India, we have that as a declining share for railways, and it's gone down to 18% in 2020. Average travel time, or rather average distance traveled by trucks as well, is at 300 kilometers per day, compared to a global average of 500 to 800 kilometers per day. We are also lagging behind, the turnaround time at the ports, so which is global is about 0.97 days. We are at a 2.59 days as an average around it in FY20. And also not only the handling at the port, but logistics to kind of get to the port as well from the manufacturing facility. Bottom part of the slide suggests that in terms of China, Vietnam, Bangladesh is kind of almost less than 1 day or 1 day kind of a thing maximum, but we take almost 7 to 10 days for shipments to happen. These are average times, so there would be certain differences based on where the manufacturing capacity is. If it's next to the port, then there would be some changes as well in that area. We can move to the next slide, Siddharth, please. Thank you. With this, like, it's not that the government is not aware of some of these issues and challenges. So government has tried to mitigate some of this as well, with several measures that they've taken, also reforms to address some of these structural infrastructure issues. So the government has launched multiple schemes to support the growth of the sector. And some of them are highlighted over here also in terms of, the planned development of roads, railways, waterways, and a stronger logistic distribution network. And these are being driven through, a combination of various initiatives like a Bharatmala, Sagarmala, NLP, DFC, and the NIP part of it there. Out of which I think, National Infrastructure Pipeline, which will run co-terminus with the yesterday's big mega announcement, which had happened on the National Asset Monetization Program. That is something which, along with the implementation of logistics policy, the national logistic policy, will certainly help to create a fundamental shift, if I may say, in terms of how the India is perceived from a logistics standpoint there. And these initiatives will complement the optimistic sentiment as well, which is coming in the industry, with the increase in the e-commerce demand, as well as, there are many companies, especially like in the IT, electronics, peripheral sector, which is kind of already preferred to set up their bases in India, expand their operations as well, in terms of their manufacturing base in South Asia, as part of a China Plus One strategy, but otherwise as well in terms of the rebalancing that they're looking at there. So with this, let me just talk quickly on one more slide on the national logistics policy, and then we will begin the panel discussion there. So as you can see, the objective of the national logistics policy is kind of a very clear objective. That we want to improve our ranking in the logistics performance index, to 25 to 30, and also we want to reduce the logistics cost by 5% of the GDP over the next 5 years. The policy has got, this is quite an extensive policy. There's got many components in that, but the 5 key pillars which have been done is to say that how do we have an integrated logistics service? How do we have an efficient and multimodal transport infrastructure? Also, the meeting the logistic needs for core sectors, which are the one which are, very freight heavy sectors as well. And also in terms of, for our exports business or to fuel the export business, the logistics for the international competitiveness there, and also the logistics for emergencies and disaster, there as well. So these are some of these areas that the logistics policy is going to address. And since this is an important area, we'll essentially try and begin with one macro picture and also the national logistics policy, and discuss this with our panelists for today. So with this, Siddharth, we can close the presentation, there, and then would request our panelists, so as able to switch on the videos and can come on video as well. Manu, I'll come to you first, and Jagan, on the same issue, would like your views as well on that. As you were discussing in the initial part of it, there India, and also emerging economies like Vietnam and Thailand are likely to become like very strongly integrated even further with the global supply chain. And there are many factors which are fueling that, whether it's a geopolitical aspect of it, whether it is the, the pandemic induced requirement to have a kind of a rebalancing of the supply chain. So as the companies are reviewing their supply chains, how do you think this is going to contribute to the India's manufacturing and export landscape, over the next, if you were to look at 5 to 10 years, how is this changing, our stance on that? Manu, if I may come to you first, and then Jagan, if you could also add to that.
Yeah, okay. So good afternoon. Can I be heard?
Yes, absolutely, Manu. Very clear.
Okay, great. So, so the question is, I think related to how India is positioning itself in the global space, right? And as part of some of the opportunities that are available today. So one of the things I would like to say is that, the supply chain infrastructure, logistics infrastructure has to go hand in hand with the manufacturing capabilities. And when we say manufacturing capability, it also means the right quality at the right price and at the right time. So it's not that, we can do this or that. We have to do both. We have to develop our manufacturing infrastructure as well as our logistics infrastructure. So India has a lot going for it, but if we really want to be that $5 trillion economy and we want to, compete with the likes of China, we really need to up our game. And, there will be issues like COVID and other such hindrances which will come on. So yesterday I learned a new word called adaptability. So it's a combination of being adept and another being agile. So it's adaptability, right? If I can say it correctly. So which means that we have to be willing to stand up to all the challenges that will come. At the same time, we have to keep moving ahead, right? You already touched upon on many of the government initiatives and, being part of various national logistics councils. I'm fortunate to have been part of some of these discussions at different forums as well as, with government groups. But I think this time around, the government is really serious and giving importance to warehousing, logistics, infrastructure, and total supply chain management. I think that we have gained this importance, particularly during COVID times when right from food supply chains to pharma supply chains were highly disrupted, and then we had to sort of rise to the occasion to actually be able to deliver. So I'm not sure I've completely answered your question, Neeraj, but we can come back. I would like to hand it over to the next panel.
Yeah, so I think the context is, so first of all, happy to be here and thanks for inviting. One, in terms of the global supply chain, if you were to look at it from the India perspective, a lot of investments, Neeraj, you talked about the national infra pipeline, which is there, and also coinciding that with the NMP, we also touched upon the whole Sagar Mala, Bharat Mala part of it. I think it has to be first inward looking, get a lot more, I think for next 5 to 7 years would be critical to leverage the investments which is there, and government is taking a significant head start in making those investments. This needs to continue even for years going ahead. One part of it is that government has viewed this as a infra sector, not just by announcing it. It's not good enough. I think it needs to follow through and make those investments and enable more private sector investments to come through. So I think the whole supply chain part of it will only get activated when enough availability of hard infra is there, and the whole manufacturing will start to boom once this investment is there. It's always a chicken and egg situation of whether the investments needs to come in first, the market needs to come in first, what needs to lead to the other. But we have seen enough proof that at least growing economies like ours, if you provide the infrastructure, the usual great saying is that they will come. Build it, they will come. So I think that's what we need to kind of hope upon and make those parts of it. I think about close to 5.5 lakh crore. Yesterday also the FM talked about saying that this is 134% to what was last year's budget. Much of it is going in the road and rail and building those infrastructure. The key would be to have an integrated view of looking at it, and so that we'll be able to tap in once these investments comes through. The other key critical part of it is also to look at this more as manufacturing plus logistics coming together and not attack it on a silo basis. So I think that's an important part of it. And so wherever you're able to get the land, labor, capital, the factors of production, build those logistics infrastructure and around it so that you'll be able to.
Yeah. So if I just may add something, please permit me. So, see, there are some things which are fundamentally need correction. For example, today warehousing is still considered as a commercial activity, right? When we talk about logistics infrastructure, manufacturing companies want world-class logistics parks and warehousing to come. So they need to be embedded with industry, because that's where the manufacturing is happening, and that's where we are supposed to be providing the service both on the inbound supply chain and the outbound supply chain. Now, unfortunately, if you go to any industrial park, first of all, you cannot go and set up a warehouse there, right? So because they say warehousing is a commercial activity and this is an industrial unit, and it requires, or it's only meant for manufacturing units. So there's a complete mismatch. Now government is thinking of, multi-modal parks and logistics park where coexistence will happen in warehousing as well as manufacturers, both users of the services and providers of the service and all of that. But we actually need to move very, very fast now. These are simple things, I mean, I think we have all been to places like Singapore and Hong Kong where they have very tiny landmass, but they have built vertical warehouses. They have provided, freight elevators. They have provided ramps that go up to floor 10. And here we are, struggling with the basic things. That has to change if we really want to be part of the supply chain wave and, the global manufacturing wave that in the China Plus One policy, which we are hoping to participate in. So while Sagarmala and all these various other projects, they are, pretty long projects. They require 20, 25 years. And yes, it's a great thing that government is seized of this, but we really need to move super fast. That is one. Secondly, every stakeholder in the supply chain, whether it's the user, the provider, or the infrastructure companies, they need to come together on a common platform, right? So that we are having aligned goals. The objectives are clear. Yes, obviously everybody is in the business of doing business, right? And you want to be profitable as an enterprise. But we must have aligned goals, right? And we all have roles to play in that. Now, what I may say is that it's very easy to say, I need a green building, a world-class warehouse, but when you approach some of the companies, they are comparing the pricing with some, not even B or C grade warehouse, which is, at a price which it's not sustainable. You cannot go and build a real world-class warehouse and then expect that, I'll be able to offer it at a price which is actually rock bottom and fit for a C grade warehouse. So all the stakeholders, the users, the manufacturers, the stakeholders in terms of infrastructure, the people who are investing the money in world-class warehousing, all of them need to align, work together. And it's an arduous journey, but we have to begin at the beginning, right? So maybe I'll just pause and I just thought I'll add that aspect also, right? Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Manu, for that. And I think you brought a very big smile on Vineet's face. Certainly, with the aspect on increased pricing for a better service, and which is naturally the requirement as well. So, Vineet, if I may get you here, considering that that from a warehousing perspective and the logistics parks perspective, you could give us a view there, certainly. So if you would like to, maybe help us with macro perspective, if there are any specific areas that you would highlight, from a India point of view, that India is focusing on certain sectors or certain aspects around that. And the second was certainly on the on our quest to become the global supply chain hub. What are the areas which in logistics sector, and particularly in warehousing, which would need transformation. Manu raised some of the aspects on policy side of it, also in terms of the availability of a quality infra as well within the warehousing space.
Sure. So thank you, Neeraj, and thank you everybody for having me here. Manu actually brought smile to my face. There's no doubt to it. So, okay, so I'll want to start with what happens in India. We are extremely good at planning things. We are extremely good at it. But when it comes to execution, there are a lot of challenges always. So there will be a lot of policies which will support the growth. There will be a lot of DPRs made, a lot of formulations will happen. But on ground, the reality is very different. Like Manu said, we are all looking at, so what we are talking about, what we are discussing basically is operationally, we are trying to address the operational inefficiencies in the entire logistics sector, right? Whether it is because of inefficient infra, whether it is because of inefficient technology usage, or for that matter, any reason to it. But end of the day, we are all willing to improve the operational efficiency of a park, or for that matter, MMLP or anything that government is planning. Now, what happens is in India, the way the manufacturing is trying to, so there is a lot of mobilization happening from other countries to India. That's the fact. But are we prepared to support the growth? Because manufacturing, like everybody said, cannot sustain on its own. It has to be supported by logistic. And Neeraj, like you rightly said, around 70% is still supported by road traffic, right? And if I have to just give you a number, the per kilometer per ton cost that India currently bears is roughly around 2 rupees, which is almost double than what a US or any other country would bear, right? Which is very, very high. Now it all adds to the cost, and hence we see that the cost of logistics is very high, which is currently at 14%. And we have been hearing this quote that India wants to be in a sub 10% spend on the GDP for 5, 6 years, 7 years. Obviously, there is a lot of good start which has happened, but the pace at which it is happening is not sufficient. The pace at which we want to grow, the aspiration that we have is not sufficient for us to support the current growth that we have. So just as a number, India is going to double its stock in next 4 years in terms of warehousing and logistics space. So that number will be around 760, 800 square feet, 700 to 800 million square feet of logistics space. Now, if I have to just categorize that, you'll see, like Manu rightly said, almost 500 would be a grade B development, right? And when you say grade B, the simple comparison is when you talk about global supply chain, Manu will agree to me and everybody else will agree to me that internationally the storage is always defined in cubic feet or cubic meter of storage. In India, we still define it as square footage of storage, right? So that's a huge gap. Now, if I just have to throw a number, if I'm talking about transacting 1,000 square meter of space in a grade B or a grade C space, the total storage volume will be maybe around 8,000 to 10,000. While if you talk about grade A, the storage will be around 12,000. So you talk about per unit storage cost of a material. If I have say 100 SKUs, then you talk about per unit storage cost that's way higher in a grade B and grade C, which a lot of stakeholders which are involved in the logistics supply, whether it is client, whether it is customer, whether it is any end user, they don't understand this in India, unfortunately. While a lot of people understand this, a lot of it is defined by the cost metric to it, which has to change immediately. Now, the second part of it is why government is planning MMLP and other things. The infra currently, if you talk about a lot of mix of the trucks which are available in the country, even the normal road in the state highway and a lot of turning and other things, Indian roads still don't support a 40-feet trailer. Most of the Indian roads will not support a large trailers, large trucks movement, right? We have MMLPs defined, we have private logistic parks, we have a lot of industrial parks, but these will not support. And hence, all these shortcomings and different components of a logistic bring in operational efficiency. One is storage, second is road infra, third is the connectivity to the port, connected to the rail. All of this brings in operational efficiency. So it is not just about addressing one part of it, whether I build a grade A or a grade A plus park, it will not matter to us because the cost will not go down because the other factors we are not addressing. So from a global supply chain perspective, we have to go, manufacturing has to support it by logistic, and also by the road infra and the rail infra and the water infra. So that's a brief of what I have to say at this moment.
Sure. Thanks, Vineet, for that. And you did bring out some of the parts which I would like to go slightly in more detail as well. And I'll come back to you in terms of from a data perspective because Vineet spoke of the operational efficiency part of it, which is where I would like to come to you as well. But Manu, if I come to you, first on this, Vineet also brought out the point of standardization. And he spoke about the physical storage, aspect of it, but there are other assets as well, equipments, processes which are there, also in terms of accounting and digital payments also, which are part of the national logistic policy around it. So what would be, some of the areas that you would suggest or say that are, areas of concern that logistics companies would face, and also how they can achieve standardization in a best possible way? How can we improve standardization and focus on more and more on this area?
Well, it's a great question, Neeraj, because, recently only the government has, and through the logistics department has come out with this, it's a guiding document. First, we thought it'll be part of the logistics policy, but apparently, executing and implementing is not so easy in a country like India. So it has now remained as a guiding document, right? So the document is very well made, very articulated, and many brilliant minds have worked on it. From government side, from private sector, from industry people like us, technology comes. So the document is a good document. Now, point is, we have to all implement it, right? See, there is no point in having the world-class standard as a document where we're going to have standardization of logistics processes, infrastructure, etc. But unless people adopt it, it's not going to succeed. And this is where we all as stakeholders, in fact, I'm getting involved in another initiative, which is we are trying to build a warehouse association of India. And the thing is that these standards are there, but we need to, all the stakeholders have to come together, whether it's the user, right? Whether it's the service provider, whether it's the person like, Vineet's company who develops this, and there are so many other logistics park companies. So everybody has to come together, like I said earlier, and implement this. So the person who's building the infrastructure, it's fine, right? But the person who's the user, for example, if you see 90% of the freight that moves on road in India is not palletized, right? Now, what does it happen? So why is it not palletized? Because if you see the standard Indian truck, you can't put two standard pallets side by side on the floor, right? So what happens, there's a space lost, and therefore the cost of moving by road becomes higher. So what people do, they move it in cartons. Now, instead of using pallets where, you can unload a 40-foot container in 20 minutes with a forklift, if you are going to have, let's say, 2,000 cartons and then have 6 people or 8 people manually unloading it, look at the cost efficiency. And when we talk, we are supposed to, try to bring the logistics cost down, but these are fundamental things. So already there's a discussion that, there should be standardization on the width of the vehicles, which will permit palletization of cargo, and it can move. So while you may say you have, you may have less cargo in a vehicle going as compared to, let's say, a non-palletized cargo, but just look at the efficiency in handling, and there is very little damage possibility if it's palletized. So simple things like that, we need to adapt. Most modern warehouses, modern countries where, which are having advanced level of logistics processes, everything moves in palletized way, whether it, irrespective of the industry. Now, here, unfortunately, we like to overthink a lot of things. And what happens is the standards of, let's say, an FMCG company are a little different from, let's say, an automotive company, or they are a little different from a pharma company. So they will have a different kind of a pallet, or they'll have a different requirement or different process for handling. So yes, so while this broad guideline is there, as part of this, logistics, this standardization document, but sector-wise, it has to be adopted and fine-tuned. Automotive is one of the most organized and I think efficient logistics supply chains, and we should learn from that and apply to other sectors. So unless every sector tweaks this particular standardization initiative to their particular industry to make a success, we will not succeed. You simply not say that, no, it doesn't suit me, so I will not adopt it. So I think it's a change, it's a mindset change, and we all, as part of the ecosystem of supply chain, logistics, etc., we have a role to play, right? We have a role to play. We have to adopt these modern processes. We have to adopt these practices, share best practices, and the overall state of the industry has to improve. So again, sorry, I may take a little longer than I should, but I'm pausing here. Over to you, Neeraj. Thank you.
No, sure. And Vineet, would you like to add something more to it?
Yeah, so like Manu said, standardization is the need. There is no doubt to it, Neeraj. I briefly mentioned about the storage volume. What happens is, so simple, when we design our parks, I'll tell you a simple example. We design our gates to take one truck at least in, say, 90 second to 120 second. Right? Now, I'm doing everything for my park to be efficient. But if the road outside is not efficient, if it does not support the turning, if the road cannot take the load of the trucks that I am willing to have in my park, then obviously it will bring in the entire value chain, and entire logistics supply chain gets hampered, right? The operational efficiency get into right from each stage of the project. I can address my thing, but the government will have to be forthcoming. That is one, and improve the entire infra. Second is also, like somebody said initially, that warehousing is still treated as a commercial activity. That probably needs to change immediately, because that has to be part of maybe industrial or infra, so that the approval process, right? Now, why standardization is not there, we need to understand that, because there is no framework which is applicable nationally. And hence, there was this representation to the government, which Manu mentioned about standardization. Now, what it does is it brings a level playing field for all the developers, whether it is grade A, grade B, grade C. Now, the park has to be compliant. A lot of these parks are not compliant in India, unfortunately, right? Now, the moment we talk about compliance, there is a time involved, there is a cost involved. But at the same time, the end product that we get after all these compliances in place is something that we need, that India needs to support its current manufacturing and the logistic aspiration that we have. So overall, all in all, I think standardization is a must thing. Obviously, we can go into just simple example. There is no straightforward standard design standards for a warehouse. Somebody can design IS standards, somebody can take American standards, somebody can take anything. Even that level of standardization is not available, unfortunately. And hence, there is huge amount of deviation which happens in the compliances, and huge amount of delta which is there between one park versus other park. And each park may be very differently. So when it talks about operation, it can be very, very differently supportive of what we want to do versus what we don't want to do. Right. So we really need to focus on what not to do in the overall scheme of things. Yeah, that's it for me.
Sure, Vineet. So Vinod, if I come to you, so far we've discussed, on the areas of standardization. We went down some more detail on that, and then also on the we brought out a point on operational efficiency, again and again in that. And technology is one of the, let's say, a very large enabler, for driving standardization and also for improving efficiency. What would be your thoughts, in line with the discussion that we've had so far, and if you could touch on that in a more specific detail on the iLogs as well, the India Logistics Platform and Logistics Monitor, which the government is intending to have in terms of the a secured place for logistics document exchange. How do you think that would also basically help in terms of this efficiency and standardization part of it there?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Neeraj. In my view, we also, before we see how technology can help us, we also need to understand why this has become very important today. If many of us in this sector have been pushing for tech enablement or adoption for many years, and if you look at countries outside of India, they have been able to adopt many of these practices and platforms much earlier. Now, what we are seeing here is one, as you presented in your initial slides, that there are a certain set of historical structural challenges that we have in India, given the diversity and the traditional way of operating, the way we have done things. But what's happening today is, if you look at from a customer expectations, I mean, at the end of the day, people in the business are also, I would say, Indians like all of us, right? As a consumer. So if you think of as a consumer, how you have now changed your expectations from, say, the last mile delivery. Your expectations are now very, very different as compared to what they were, say, 5 years back or 10 years back. So as you get exposed to the kind of possibilities that exist, right? Like you can track where your food is, where your whatever you have ordered on an e-com site. I mean, the kind of tracking, and if there are no delivery slots available, you also get an option to say, okay, these slots are full. What's the next available slot? So all of us as consumers, we have gotten exposed, I would say, to the possibilities that technology can offer. Now, as we go into our workplace in that sense, right, in a B2B segment, when we are dealing with other suppliers or other customers, other vendors, we are now carrying that same kind of an expectation. And it's a fair expectation. Can technology solve it? Can it enable it? Yes, it can. But that is what I would, in my view, there has been a big shift in the recent years, which has been caused by this factor of all of us we have felt it now. We have really seen what it can do actually. So in that sense, I think it's a very good initiative that the current government and a lot of quasi-governmental organizations are also pushing for these kind of platforms, right? In a platform, in my view, there are, I would say, a few major components which I believe the current platform also is addressing. But one is the demand side of it, in terms of there are businesses, there are shippers in that sense, like who want to leverage, who want to use a logistics service in that sense. So that's the demand part of it. So to be able to consolidate all the needs or all the requirements that different businesses, different shippers may have, then there comes the supply part of it. Like, how do I get all the companies or all the even the unorganized sector, like how do I get them to a platform where if I have a vehicle, if I have a capability on the logistics or on the warehouse, how do I get in there as somebody who can provide that service? So that's the other component. I mean, so I need to have the consolidation of the demand and the supply side. Now, as all of us again have gotten used to this whole user rating, right? So before you install any app or anything, you go check for reviews, you check for what's the feedback, whether you're buying a product or installing anything or like doing anything with technology. So that's the third aspect, I would say, that how do you allow like a performance management, and not just by a centralized agency, but even users, I mean, consumers who are using that service. So that kind of democratizing the rating part of it or the performance evaluation part of it. I think that's the third aspect of what the technology is enabling. And the fourth, I would say, is the entire piece around security and traceability and all of that. Right? That's again, that's really very, very essential as we start democratizing data in that sense. I mean, like now more participants are able to view, able to create data, right? So I need a mechanism where it can be secure. And if there is some confidential information between two parties, that directly is not exposed. At the same time, there is some kind of what we call as metadata or some kind of analytics based on that, right? I mean, which can still be exposed, which is something which others can also see in terms of what's the overall volume, what's the availability in real time also, right? I mean, do I have availability for today, for tomorrow, if I need to avail of some service? So that kind of detail needs to be still available. At the same time, what is exactly going into a load, I mean, that obviously is a confidential and available only to the two parties involved. And that traceability through, now we have blockchain and other technologies which can actually enable that kind of traceability also. So these are, I would say, in my view, the good features or the must-have features of a good platform, which I believe the platforms which are currently positioned or which are being deployed by the central agencies, the government agencies and all of that meets. I mean, it provides all that framework. So that's what I would say in a nutshell, that it's the right time, and especially the last year and a half of disruption that we have gone through has also shown us that having this kind of a tech platform, what is the real benefit out there? And definitely some sectors have, it has also helped us challenge the traditional models, right? In certain sectors, it has challenged, it has shown that you can actually do things differently. In certain other sectors, it has actually proven the benefit of having the traditional approach of a distributor, retailer, and that kind of a model. And hence the need for logistics in that kind of a setup is also very different. Right? So it has shown us what sectors I can actually challenge and do things differently, and what sectors I actually need to strengthen. I mean, something which is the lifeline. I mean, like my milk supply in a lockdown, I need to make it available in that neighborhood. I cannot possibly sell that. I can possibly sell it, but I really can't scale supplying that through e-commerce and door-to-door delivery of through an e-com kind of a channel. Right? So that's what I would say, and we can definitely discuss.
Sure. So Manu, if I bring you here to get your perspective on the aspects in the ILOG, which is getting done right now, is kind of integrating all the logistic-related digital portals, which the government's been having there right now, and also as an industry participant, Are there any couple of areas which are of, let's say, key concern or issues as well that you would like to, like the government to focus on and address, while you kind of give your perspective on this?
Sure. So Neeraj, I'll respond in two parts. One is, the need, of course, we recognize that it's important. And in today's day and age, everybody wants to have the visibility, right? So, see, the current form of this iLogic portal is huge. And it's going to take a long time to actually execute it and make it live. So the port group has already done a fair amount of integration, but we are expecting to connect customs, port, and all the different agencies is related. Yeah. Is my voice echoing? Or is it okay? Sorry.
Now it's better. I think it was both the options were on, on the phone as well as on the video. That's why it was echoing earlier. Must have been difficult for you. Now it's better. So Manu, you'll have to switch on your voice on the phone.
Sorry, yeah.
No
much. So anyway, what I feel is that we should plan for some quick wins, because if we think in one shot, everything is going to happen. Now, if you look at the GST portal, I mean, it's a great vision and a lot of good work has happened. But when we are trying to, get all 27, 28 states, union territories together and all stakeholders, there will be hitches. There will be challenges. So in my view, again, we should take this whole project, break it into smaller parts and make it doable, right? So yes, we may have, the port is there, then the airlines and the aviation department, the airports, etc. And then let's say bring the rail, etc. on it. But I think we should quickly launch whatever's ready. We should not wait for everything to be complete in all aspects and then ask people to come on, because by that time the demand may have changed, circumstances may have changed, the business needs would have changed. So I believe it's important that if there is one module that is ready, invite the stakeholders, get them do a beta test and make it live. And we can keep adding and building, right? Because it's a very gigantic project. Now, another thing is, some amount of work has happened. I think someone mentioned about demand and availability. Now, I'm assuming you may have all heard of another company called Map My Warehouse, right? So Map My Warehouse was also working on this project with us in the logistics for the logistics department, and they have taken a step forward and mapped around 20,000 warehouses all India, right? Now, so we have to, this information is available to them. They have done the geofencing, etc., right? Now, if, for example, we have users who actually come onto that network, and let's say somebody said there's a demand and there's a warehouse available somewhere, the visibility will be real time and live. So this is what I was saying, that we all need to come together. And again, I'm sorry, I'm coming back to this initiative of mine, which is Warehousing Association of India, that the objectives over there, one is that, yes, implementation of the standards that we have spoken about, and bringing together all partners in the ecosystem under one framework. About 2 weeks ago, I was, when the secretary, Mr. Padmanabhan was retiring, so there was a formal address to all the people who work with him on this project. And somebody made a very valid point that, listen, let's not expect the government to do everything. Okay, industry has to do its bit also. We have to come together and whatever, see, government can give us support and some things they can do. But if we are, let's say, the user, the beneficiary, and so we have to, play our part in that. We have to also up our game. Not only say that, okay, government will make this thing, and then what can we do, right, to enhance the overall experience of users, through the platform. Let's say, Blue Yonder, and there are many such companies who have solutions. Okay, let's connect or make it available to the users so that they will benefit, right? So this is what I want to say. And lastly, in closing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the UAE, Dubai, what they are doing is, they are of course at a very advanced stage. But having said that, it's a much smaller country. But they have already gone into a blockchain model where already the ports, airports are integrated, and now they are integrating the e-commerce companies on their platform, which is going to be a completely different level. So literally what Amazon is doing, the government of UAE is trying to do something similar, but for all stakeholders, and not only, let's say you have certain benefits or whatever, listing on Amazon, selling on Amazon, etc., but they want to make that available to everybody in the supply chain. So you could have a brand from India wanting to go to UAE, and he can get tagged on the government portal as an e-commerce supplier, and he will get all the benefits, like like for example, if he's doing B2C supplies, he doesn't have to pay duty up to a certain level. The transaction fees are reduced. So it's quite amazing. But see, these are pilots that have been done in certain economies. We should learn from them rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every time. Collaborate with them, get information, and then move it across to stakeholders. And importantly, I think Vineet said that we are very good at making project reports and this, that, but we actually suffer when it comes to implementation. We really need to, implement, walk the talk, and have some quick wins. Don't look at, I'm going to have such a long-term project, I'm going to take 10 years to implement it. By that time, technology will have changed. If we are on Java today, we'll be on something else that time. So, I mean, that's a few things from my side. Thank you.
I know, very, very briefly, but that reminds me of a project that we were doing, wherein, the specs for a computer, was already, obsolete when it was kind of almost rolled out. And there was an insistence by that department to say that, no, we want to procure only that specific computer.
Correct.
While the manufacturer also was not manufacturing it, So
just imagine. So we got to change the way we do our business. And I'm sorry, I'm saying that every one of us has a role to play. Let's not wait for somebody else to do that. Everybody has a role to play. Let's see what we can do. Can we talk to 10 people and align our thoughts and say, okay, let's do something good for the industry, right?
Correct. So let me get Jagan now on this. And Jagan, let's do a little bit of a zoom in on the multi-modal logistics parks. We just briefly touched on it in the previous discussion. And Vineet, I'll come to you after Jagan. So given your experience, Jagan, logistics parks, can you please elaborate, in terms of what has worked and what has not worked well, on the MLP policy in the scheme that has been running? We understand that there are 35 locations that have been identified. Also in terms of, if you can, while you're speaking, you can just touch upon saying that what are the areas that the government should be focusing on, specifically from an MLP perspective there?
Sure, I think, so I think put across a very valid one in terms of infrastructure. MMLPs is something that is being talked by the government. The point is on MMLP as a concept in India is itself pretty new to that extent. So it's about 3 to 5 years is where we've been talking about it, but the real action has started to happen in the last 3 to 5 years. And I would say the identification of the locations and also in terms of what needs to be done there is still evolving to that extent. So I think we are still in its infancy. The policy is there, locations have got identified. There are multiple entities who are approaching this, which is also good. Let's say you have NHAI who's looking at it, you have Concor on one side looking at multimodal logistics parks, then you have the dedicated freight corridor. They're also looking at some of the sites along with both the freight corridors on the promoting and getting the MMLPs up and running. So I think in a way that's good. Therein also lies the challenge part of it, because while the MMLP sites has got identified, we also need to look at who is going to be developing this, right? So I think there is a fair amount of need for public-private partnership to come through. Private entities are being roped in to get this up and running. So in terms of what needs to be done is clearly 3 things. One is to have a uniform way of development. So at least have a model concession agreement rolled out so that multiple entities who are going to be doing this don't come up with their own set of aspects which is there. Second is to have a fairly good amount of consultation with the people before this kind of gets rolled out. We have seen success in a different area I'll talk about, which is the toll operate transfer on the roadside. The main success happened because it was also a kind of a monetization initiative on the roadside happened, but the success happened because a fair amount of consultation happened quite quickly. Like Manu says, that it was not a long drawn part of it. Quick consultation, getting everybody on board, thrashing things out, and then a document which got done. And I would say 95% of what was done then is still running across just today, and multiple sectors are wanting to adopt that as well. So I think the point is that if you start with a good beginning, then that will also get ironed out. The third one is also not wait for government to be doing these multiple logistics park, but also get across the private sector to do it. That's one part. The second is many of this multimodal name is quite fancy, saying it's multimodal, but it's actually single mode. If I were to say, it's a logistics parks with just the road part of it, which is there. So if it has to be truly multimodal, you need to have at least 3 modes coming in together and to do it, not just 2. I'm consciously saying 3 of them. Out of the 4, 3 being any of the one which is there, it says the road, rail, water, or in terms of the air part of it. So identify those sites, get them up and running, get those connected. You have the RCS scheme of the UDAN, which is there. So if it is in the hinterland part of it, get the road, rail, and the aviation tied up. So if it is anywhere in the coast part of it, look at to the rail part of it coming through. So I think those are the ones that needs to be actively done to have this up and running. I think in a way, the limited goal should be that no product should travel more than 100 kilometers from its point of origination before it hops onto any of these logistics parks, and it can get picked from there and get transported further. The moment it starts traveling beyond this kind of a distance, it becomes cost uncompetitive. Sometimes the logistics cost becomes even higher than the product cost because of the lack of availability of these aggregation centers. So I think those are the aspects that we need to look at it. Last but not the least is also just now, this is somewhere driven from the central government. You need to have a significant buy-in from the state government as well, because land is a state subject. And hence, for these multimodal logistics parks to become in a way picked up and thrive on its own, then you need to get the state machinery on board, identify those critical states from where you need to have those dialogues and get them involved. And the capacity building is also an important aspect for all of these people to get. And why is it needed? How does it going to contribute? Mind you, I mean, we're all aware, it's a very informed audience out here. Logistics is one of the greatest employment generator. The multiplier effect is significant as far as logistics is concerned, and you will be able to create employment where it is needed. The semi-skilled and underskilled kind of people can really get employed quite quick and quite fast, and the overall impact is significant across the region that you're going to be looking at. So I think these are some of the ones which are there for the multimodal logistics park, and how it needs to gets phased out in the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you.
Sure, Jagan. You bring out some of the points from an MMP perspective, and I would like to draw Vineet into the discussion as well. Given Vineet, this is your focus area, specifically from a logistics parks perspective. So, what would be your thoughts on the current focus that the government has had on this? Any changes or improvements to be done? And secondly, from a private sector perspective, also, which Jagan and Manu also highlighted that more and more private investment should happen in this area. So, if you could specifically focus on that one as well.
Sure, Neeraj. So see, as a plan, Neeraj, like we started, we are exceedingly well in planning things, right? So there is no doubt to it that we would have planned this very well. Now, as far as my feedback is concerned on this, I will be very, very particular about the site selection, right? So like Jagan mentioned that the point where these multimodal logistic parks are based cannot be more than 100 kilometers, right? Now, what happens is in this whole logistic setup, there are three things that happens. One is a last mile, mid mile, and the first mile. So in logistic, the base of, again, I'll go back to that operational inefficiency thing. What we are trying to do is, again, reduce the cost of logistics, right? So you have to be as close to the consumer as possible. Now, what happens in logistic is, if you are far away, then the cost spent per kilometer per ton is again very high. So you need to select your site very, very carefully. When I say carefully, there are a lot of technical parameters, a lot of traffic parameters basis which you select a site. Obviously, there has to be a buy-in from the land, from the state department, because again, land is a state subject, no doubt to it. Now, what happens is, a lot of these projects at the concept level seems very, very good. But when it comes to actual implementation on the site, assuming that there is a project that the first MMLP that's now in implementation phase is in Assam, you have just one phase of the land available with you, right? One phase of the land may not actually fulfill all the desires that the government would have laid. Now, what happens is, MMLP, you have road, rail, port, all of that connectivity. Now, there are very high chances that one of the elements, assuming that we are able to improve the efficiency by 10%, one of the element contributes maybe 2% to it. Now, that 2% will not be actually realized because entire land was not there. Now, second part of it is the approvals, right? While the government is very good at planning, again, they have done this very well. Now, the approval process, the regulatory part of it has to be very, very fast track. Now, we all keep hearing about single window clearance and all of that across the board in all the asset classes, across the sector, across industrial, everything. Now, the government has to be very clear that if it is MMLP and if they want public-private participation, then the regulatory affair has to be taken care by the government. The participation has to happen there on a presumption and on a confirmation from the government that, yes, this is given. And there have been cases. So for example, I'll give you one case wherein I was involved personally. So there was a port which was coming up in Maharashtra. It was an all-weather port. And this was way back in 2008. Even today, till date, that port does not have a good road or rail, which was committed. And it's been 13 years now. And that was supposed to be an all-weather FTWZ and all of that. Now, similar story, we have our learnings, and we should draw those learnings and implement all of that in the new project that we are planning. Now, what happens is also so in our experience, a lot of these location, I spoke about the location of these MMLPs. Even when you draw parallel to our logistic parks that we do, we carefully select the land from a perspective that a lot of customers do not want to cross a toll across the country, right? They don't want your logistic space, your warehousing space, or your industrial space to be located just outside the toll. Even a kilometer ahead of the toll, they are not accepting it for a simple reason, not because they don't want to pay the toll tax, but because of the time that takes for the truck or the trailer to cross the toll. Now, obviously, the government has done a lot of good work about FASTag and all of, now they are bringing in the GPS-based toll collection system. So obviously, things will improve. But how soon that will be implemented, nobody can answer today. So even from that perspective, government needs to be very clear that, yes, there can be a collection center, there can be toll collection center, but everything will be technology enabled so that your inbound and outbound times are kept to a minimum, kept to an optimum, right? Now, those things are small things which will make a difference. Now, I'll give you a simple example in the Delhi NCR market. A lot of you may know this. Now, you see the development that has gone in Haryana in terms of warehousing and logistic. That's fabulous. The reason why it has happened is of the development on the Eastern Peripheral Expressway and the Western Peripheral Expressway. Now, entire belt of Haryana and a lot of belt in the UP, an entire 280, 290 kilometer of that Eastern and Western Peripheral Expressway is so well connected to Haryana and UP belt that a lot of people are okay to travel a little longer distance. But the time they take to deliver from the warehouse to the consumer has been so good that they are absolutely okay to travel a little farther. Now, the reason is they're paying huge amount of toll, but they're okay because the efficiency that the good infra has brought in and the site selections have brought in is humongous. So such is the importance of the site selection process, and also making sure that on the regulatory side, government is supporting the private participation, which is currently not what we all would wish for.
Sure.
That's from my side, Neeraj.
Sure. Thanks, Vineet. Jagan, if I get you in again that we spoke about MMLP and the related areas to focus on. there's one aspect that you were also highlighted, and Manu also highlighted, was the private sector investments on it. And then ports has been something which has seen some record investments in 2020 and earlier as well on it. So, and we are looking at with this national asset monetization also, there is a lot more investment that will come in the logistics sector overall. So, what would be some of the areas that you would say are required for private sector participation, and for the government, what are the couple of asks that you'll have from the government to kind of expedite and accelerate this investment scenario?
Yeah, so very good point. I think at the start, it's important to also have the key ask would be a national logistic master plan to be coming through. I mean, please have it in a very time-bound manner. It's not just for discussions perspective. The reason I'll also highlight why this is important, because today we are talking about multimodal logistics and everything. It cuts across 4 or 5 ministries, so to say. So you have the roads ministry, you have the rail ministry, you have the aviation ministry, you have the ports part of it, then the commerce part of it coming through. So if everybody has to work in tandem, we talked about we are good planners, but execution is found somewhere faltering. If you don't have a common vision, common document by which people are going to act upon, then this will not go through, because each of the arms, each of them, the highways will be building their highway as per that particular part of it, which could be Bharatmala, Sagarmala will be in a different manner, so on and so forth. Even if I would say, let's say an FCI and a warehousing, they, in yesterday's national monetization pipeline, they have huge, targets or to wanting to monetize their warehouses, which is there. So we have to integrate it and bring it in one particular place, which could be the national logistics master plan, which puts across, gets a time frame, gets a buy-in, gets a sign-off, all of it, which is there, so that they work on it with a time-bound manner, and who is going to be working on it. There is a special cell within the Commerce Ministry now who is looking at the logistics. They can take ownership of this, but that's one key ask which should be there. The second one is also in terms of what is the investments that can be specifically laid out by individual departments, so that it gets carved out. It does not get in the overall budgets of them. Specific investments that they will put for this particular thing to come across. I think these are the two critical things that I would put across as a specific ask of the government.
Sure. Mathur, is there a point that you want to add?
I just want to talk a little bit, just one point on the MLPs, right? So multimodal logistics parks, we need to see there are two types of requirement of logistics park. So we got to understand that there is certain logistics park which is meant for home consumption, which are going to help fulfillment of demand within the country. The second multimodal logistics park need international connectivity. So if we are talking about, being an international hub, then we need to have multimodal part like China has done along, the coastline, and where it's like we spoke about, port development infrastructure, which is then connected to the hinterland, because the raw material and the manufacturing is happening in the hinterland, right? And then that cargo has to come to the ports and exit from here. So I think it's part of the, like Jagan said very nicely, that there has to be a nodal agency. At the same time, we have to break it MFP, for domestic consumption and what we are producing for international, because the needs are different. For example, we do not have an urban logistics policy. Now, if you, in the last COVID period, you have seen, everybody wanted, next day delivery, but half the locations are on lockdown, your vehicles could not move. I mean, there's so much to be done, but I think we need to understand this is for domestic, this is for international, and build the policies and the infrastructure around that. As Niki, I've made this now, I've made it for domestic, but I want to use it for international also. It's not going to happen. Yep, thank you.
Sure, Manu. So Vinod, we're just kind of towards the end of time. May I just request you to come in and share your views on some of the major roadblocks that you see in terms of adopting these new age tech solutions that we have in terms of weather control towers, route optimization, geofencing. There are many things which are coming in as part of the blockchain solutions as well. So when you interact with companies and there is a adoption of software that they're looking at, is cost the predominant factor? Is it the awareness, understanding, or is it that, that there is, interplay between what they are using versus the service provider or, the other players in the ecosystem are using? I mean, what are the roadblocks that you see? And if there are any, couple of points that you would like to share on some mitigation as well, that could be done here.
Yeah. And so my experience has been, I've been in this for more than 2 decades in this industry. My experience has been that things have changed quite significantly in the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years. A lot of Indian businesses are now very, very open to buying technology to enable parts of their businesses. I mean, this was not the case. I mean, 10 years back, people would say that, oh, do you have an India pricing? This is too high and all that, right? It's in dollars. But things have changed. I mean, today we find that people are buying technology platforms, software platforms, given the whole, I would say, with the internet, right? I mean, today, if you have to buy a license for any of your software products, I mean, there is just one pricing. You just go on the, whether you're buying a Microsoft license or any other license, right? I mean, there may be some nuances, but it's all in the same range. And people have now started to accept that fact, and they are investing, they are buying into it because they see the value. And I normally draw an analogy with what happened in the telecom. If you look at the initial 2G and all those kind of technologies, right? I mean, it took so much time for Indian market to adopt that. But with 3G and then with 4G coming in, I mean, the adoption, it kind of just jumped a couple of generations in that whole tech journey, right? I mean, it's not that we had to go from the initial internet and then the GSM, then the 2G, 3G and all that. I mean, there are newer users from all sectors of the Indian economy or the strata. They just today, everybody buys a phone which has 4G enabled in there. It's a smartphone. So the catching up is very, very rapid. So if the business understands what is the value this technology is providing, I've not seen issues around pricing now in the recent years. It used to be there, but now businesses are very, very open. They are much more open. But the other aspect I do see is that there is a different kind of messaging which is required. Being in many of these discussions, right? I mean, if there is too much of jargon and too much of like high-level discussions going on, at some point I see the Indian software buyers kind of switching off, right? I mean, like, okay, all that is good. Tell me exactly what are you going to give me? Like, what does this platform do? What is the value it enables for me? As long as we are able to articulate in very simple terms, this is what you get, this is the benefit for you, this is what it costs. I've seen people are more open to investing in that. But if you talk about that, this is the trend, this is where the world is moving, and this is what you need to do, then the first thing is India is different, right? I mean, that's the first response you get. Oh, all that is good, it will work somewhere else, but not in India. What I've also seen as I was replying on the chat, that we have like one of our partners. So he developed, what this company has done is they have developed, say, SIM-based location tracking. So you don't even need a smartphone. Like if you really, if you want, today the only way you can do it, install trackers, install, like have a smartphone and all of that, and data usage on that, on the driver's phone. So what they came up with a very innovative solution that I really don't need to know where exactly on which side of the road that person is. I just need to know where in maybe like a 50 meter or 100 meter difference is also okay. I mean, I don't really need a very, very precise location. And the SIM-based tracking gives that. So they have come up with that kind of an approach, that kind of technology, which is very easy to use. The driver doesn't need a smartphone. They just need to say yes to an SMS which they get, and that's all. And that very well integrates with our control tower, for example. And so you get your location tracking without any additional cost. So these are kind of innovations which are required to make the same, say, a location tracking technology work in an Indian context. And these are things which we have seen then the companies are willing to adopt very fast. So that's my view, and it's more of, at the end I would say, it's more of making sure they understand what the benefit is and what exactly is that technology going to provide.
Sure, Vinod, and absolutely what you said, that there is a perception on India which continues to be heavy for many companies and individuals. But in terms of and definitely there are variations as well in terms of what companies have to do for higher adoption in India. So it's not that there's altogether an incorrect perception, but there is a lot more scale and a lot more opportunities are available as well. So with this, we'll bring the session to a close. It's been an interesting conversation. Many takeaways I would say from the various initiatives that the government has taken, the participation from the private sector as well. I think a couple of themes which are kind of running all through in terms of saying that the fact that there is a lot more stress needed on removing the operation inefficiency by introduction of the technology and the framework that is being done by the government. And I think Manu and Jagan kind of strongly highlighted that that I think, and if I try and summarize also, like saying that the government's doing a lot, but can we do in a faster execution mode? So progress over perfection was an aspect that was getting highlighted. With the fact that more implementation is to happen on the ground. And also in terms of the one thing which stuck with me, like Jagan mentioned on it, that no product should travel more than 100 kilometers, from the point of origin to the multi-model logistics park over there. And I think everything of that which is happening or will happen incorrectly would certainly add to the cost, for the the product itself, and lower our competitiveness in the global market around it. I think we are at a very, very strong point in India's journey, for movement towards having a larger share of the manufacturing in the country's GDP. And logistics sector, with the bulk of the cost, landing over there for various items and various areas aspect of it, that is a sector which is of, again, a very strong importance there. And as Manu and Jagan, Vinod, and Vineet had highlighted, that it's a participation of all the participants of, let's say, players of logistics industry, which have to really come together. Think of it like a more of a government also supporting it through a national logistics plan around it, and then also in terms of the fact that the industry participants would have to come together also to see that we are able to have a stronger movement towards the common objective. Technology is and would be a strong enabler as well in that journey. So with this, I thank very much the panelists for today. Manu, Jagan, Vinod, Vineet, pleasure to interact with you before the session and today in the session as well. They're really very helpful. And Siddharth for organizing this. May I just get you there also, Siddharth?
Sure. So thank you very much, sirs. Such an insightful and engaging conversation, and a real privilege to hear you all. And very well moderated, Mr. Bansal. And also special thanks to Mr. Bhalla for joining in, even though when you're unwell. So thank you very much. And our leaders and I have been hooked till the end, and we've taken on several perspectives from today's conversation. I'm in fact receiving messages from our members as we speak. So thank you very much. And thank you to our audience also for joining in and for staying till the end and for always sharing excellent questions. Along with our weekly webinars and our publication, we're taking these discussions live on the exclusive community app, which is curated for senior leaders across 6 industries, which are logistics, energy, e-mobility, real estate, and aerospace and defense. We're soon adding 6 more sectors to it as well. So thank you very much once again. We will be sending out invitations to our new members post the webinar. So thank you very much, and we look forward to having more such discussions in the future, sir.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.